All right, welcome to the WTF Divorce podcast. Today, we are very lucky to be joined by Efrat Fenigson. Efrat is a former corporate CMO turned independent journalist. She is the host of the You're the Voice podcast, focused on reclaiming your voice, your power, and your sense of sovereignty. Welcome, Efrat.
Thank you for having me, Rob. It's
Well, we're
great to
going
be
to
on WTF Divorce.
would you ever come on a podcast if it was like surviving divorce or reclaiming your life?
Probably not.
We named it. Well, you're a marketing wizard. We're like, how do you get people's attention? And
Yeah.
so after trying 100 names, I said, WTF is pretty much how I feel all the time.
Yep.
So yes, here we are, 185,000 people on Instagram podcast, and one thing I will say is the power of. I mean, I used to hate social media. I never even had an Instagram, but
Mm-hmm.
like you got to make it fun. But the real power of it is like how you can connect with people in 10 seconds, like just by reaching out. Could you ever do that on another
Of
channel?
No, this was, yeah. I mean, the internet today just breaks all the barriers, and you see someone you like in a podcast, and you're like finding them somewhere, wherever they are. Like, it was very hard for me to find Chris Sullivan, which I saw in one of those panels, and I'm like, where am I going to find him? And I looked everywhere, and then I found him on LinkedIn, of all places. So I reached out on LinkedIn, and he answered me within minutes. And that's it. It was on my podcast now twice. I love him. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's wild that you can do that.
It's amazing, and you do have to have boundaries around it. I fall deep down the rabbit hole sometimes, but I was telling you before we hit record, I follow Natalie Brunell. I was listening to her podcast. I heard you on there, and then I was like, I said, you ever like listen to something where you just can't get out of the car because you want to finish it, and you've met somebody that just gets it. So yeah, the power of social media and YouTube.
And thank you so much for saying that about that conversation. Yeah, I oftentimes I do a lot of podcasting. I mean, I have my own, but that's easier because then I interview other people. But when I get interviewed, sometimes I am a very authentic person, very open. So I tell a lot of stuff about my life and about the challenges and the stuff I'm going through. And oftentimes after I do it, I like look back and I'm like, should I have said that? Was that a good idea? And to be honest, you know what? Let me use your platform, take responsibility because this is very relevant. My ex-husband actually got pissed off with me after the episode with Natalie. And yeah, I mean, because of our versions of what has happened between us, like even though it was like a long, long time ago, and for 99.9% of the people that listen to this, it is really not relevant. But for him and I guess it was. And so I had to like listen to him, understand what he's saying, and kind of take responsibility for how I said certain things that bothered him. Um, Especially because of my son, that my son has listened to this conversation, and some of the things I said for him didn't sit right. Like I shouldn't have said it a different way, in his view, and I totally respect that. So I took responsibility, and I apologized. I think he's still upset with me, which is fair enough. But whatever. But with my son, that's the important thing, and I'm gonna make sure that when I meet him in like 10 days, we're gonna have a conversation about the stuff that I said and versus his dad's version, and just to clear things up because our children, as I'm sure you know, are the most important thing, and we want to keep them as clear as possible on the relationship between their parents, and we want to make sure that both of their parents are respected and honored, and that we don't paint a picture of the other one is bad or the other one is evil. Like I think that's a very bad thing to do, even if you do have a conflict with your ex, which is very common. Like I'm sure most people who get divorced have have a bad period or a bad relationship, at least for a period of time. But it's still important to be mature enough and responsible enough to to understand how each side of the equation is perceiving what is being said and take responsibility for that. So, you know.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you saying that because I'm always kind of careful as to what I say, how little I say, and I have a good relationship with my ex. But yeah, you do. And it's interesting too because it is all about your kids and you're like modeling this behavior that's probably it's weirdly a lot healthier than it might have been in a marriage where you weren't saying things. And then
Yeah,
because you're saying things in the short term, that makes things uncomfortable and you're like cringing about, oh, I shouldn't have said that.
exactly.
But at the end of the day, it's like we're teaching them probably better communication skills, like that we aren't always responsible for how somebody else feels about something, and we can still be respectful, and we can apologize when you say too much or screw up. So it's this weird, yeah. We'll talk about kind of your story, but how divorce is this just like cooks up all of these different things that we wouldn't really experience in a numb marriage.
Agreed. And, it teaches them good communication skills by example, but it also teaches them how to be better humans. Because if you are responsible what, for how another person feels because of your actions or your words, then you're actually raising a child that will be more sensitive to the environment and be more caring, right? And I don't, obviously they need to be resilient, but it's also important to, especially boys. I mean, I have a 16-year-old son. He's, I think, by far a lot more sensitive than most kids his age because of the way he sees me communicating and also take responsibility for my actions. He knows that when I fuck up, I will apologize, even if it's to him or to anyone. And because we are the parents and we are adults, oftentimes we don't want to apologize because it puts us in in an inferior position. And what does that make of us? Like, am I not a strong parent if I fuck up or do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, or have just upset his father just for that. So I think it's a really good lesson to show them that you take responsibility, that makes you a kinder, better person, not just with how you communicate, but just the fact that you are able to not resist and go into a conflict straight away, but you're able to really take what is being said and consider it and even take responsibility when it's needed. Anyway,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yes, it's better to speak than not. I am sure that is one of the reasons why many people get divorced, including myself, because you
right,
don't speak when
right.
maybe you should have.
Yeah, we keep it contained because we don't want to ruffle feathers, and then it builds up. And yeah, and I love that my kids. I mean, I see it every day how they get to experience these kind of what happens at their mom's house and her the way she raises the kids at their house, and maybe her views are different than mine. And I love that like they can now hold both of these things, and well, dad thinks this and mom thinks this, and where do I come up with it that I don't know that they would have had that opportunity, and that a lot of kids raised in a there's pros and cons to both, but it's interesting all of the like layers that divorce unlocks. Of course, it comes after I always say things get worse before they get better, but
Yeah.
really incredible the experiences that our kids have. But it kind of leads into the conversation that we're going to have as to how divorce and just putting yourself out there as you've done. And I kind of want to hear a cliff notes of your story so people get some
Okay.
context, but how it unlocks a lot of this. We hear a lot about like empowering yourself, and it's almost like cliche. And you did it, and I think divorce was probably one of the things that unlocked that for you.
Right. Yeah, I actually thought about it today before our call, and I think, like, at the time when I got divorced, it was a long time ago. It was 15 years ago almost. Um, I said to myself that that's life's best startup. It's like life's hack because you get to like experience marriage, but then if it doesn't work out and you get divorced, you have a different arrangement in which you still have a child. I mean, not everyone gets to have children before they get divorced, but you have a child, and then you just share the time. So it's a time allocation with a child, and you get to start over when you discovered something new. Hopefully you've learned something from the relationship that didn't work, and you integrated your lesson into your life so that you come around next time more improved, and you have better chances to crack a better relationship than the previous one. So it is kind of a life hack to get divorced if you look at it from that perspective. That's the way I used to look at it back in the day. But do you want to first like hear what has happened, or like how do you want me to?
Yeah, well, just
Wait.
give people a quick. I think your life and
Okay.
your story is very interesting. So you were corporate, you were crushing
Yeah.
it, and then you decided you wanted to turn, and then your life changed, and yeah, just give a little like
Okay. So
context.
yeah, I was from a young age, like in my 20s, I studied computer science, and I was always working in tech companies, at first as a developer, later on in business development, sales, and marketing. And then I landed in marketing, and I did marketing for about 20 years. And at a very young age, I held quite senior positions in startup companies, global companies, traveling around the world, making good salaries, good amount of money, always climbing up the ladder, the corporate ladder, and doing pretty well, managing a lot of people, managing big budgets, like millions of dollars of budget, and bringing revenues in the dozens of millions of dollars a year for the companies I was working for, in different industries. So I was always tech related, but different types of industries. So I got to learn a lot and see a lot and travel a lot around the world, etc. And when I was in my when was it? When I was 27, I came back from after 6 years living in Australia with my boyfriend at the time, and we came back together to Israel, where I was born and raised. And his parents were from Israel originally, but he lived in Australia all of his life. But he came back with me, and you could say that he started a new chapter, um, as a as an immigrant in a way. He did speak a little bit of the language, but culturally it was quite different from what he's used to in Australia. So he had to acclimate to the new life in Israel. It was not easy for him. He opened a small business, and we were there for altogether. We were in Israel for 4 years together until we got divorced. Um, but basically, we came in, we had 1 year to just find ourselves. And then the second year, we got married. The third year, we had our baby. The fourth year, we got divorced. So everything was like quite accelerated. And it was a big deal, like a big trauma for both of us, because we really wanted this to work and it didn't. And I didn't want to go back to Australia when things started not working out between us. um like he said, and rightfully so, like, you promised that, if it doesn't work out, we'll go back. And I had to make a really tough decision, and by the way, take responsibility for that too. I did promise it, but I didn't want to go anymore. I was with my son, and I felt more at home in Israel than I did in Australia. And I really liked the fact that I had the support of my family, and I didn't have it. I didn't have any family when I was in Australia, and that was kind of hard. And I grew up as a member of a big family too, so I really appreciated the virtues and the benefits you get out of growing up or raising kids in an environment of other children and a lot of close family. And in a young age, the kids are normally more with the mom than they are with the dad. Um, so I couldn't see myself going back to Australia. So we had to get divorced. It was really hard to do that, but I'm like, no, I'm staying here. And I actually thought that he would stay too. I didn't think he would go back, because that means not being next to his 1-year-old son. And it was, as I said before, it was really hard for him. So he had to go back. And he went back, and that was a big crisis because I stayed with a 1-year-old son. That was my choice. Like, I could have chosen something else, but I stayed, and I had to continue my rising career while I'm raising a 1-year-old baby. So I moved next to my parents to make it both work, because otherwise I would have failed one or the other, or both. And I had to continue working the same way because, I mean, I didn't have to, obviously, but if I wanted to uphold that standard of living that I had, and it wasn't nothing fancy, right? I was like simple life, but I was making enough money to pay off my debts, and I was making enough money so that I can start saving for my son and myself. And when I was raised by my parents, who are both like um, hardworking business people, like they have a family business, and it's a 47-year-old family business, and every school holiday I had, every opportunity I had, I always went to work in their factory when I was a child. So I always grew up, and not because they asked me to. I wanted to. I wanted to save money. I wanted to have my own savings. Like, that was from a very young age, the way that they brought us up, which I think is beautiful. And I always had that savings mentality. Like, I wanted to do well, and I wanted to provide for my son. And I never grew up as a super rich person, not in my family and not in my career either. But everything I thought of was to at least save enough money so that him and I can have a decent life for the rest of our lives, and we don't have to be dependent on anyone, on any family or any external source. So I wanted to continue working, and I wanted to obviously be a good mom, so I moved next to my parents. They really supported me and helped me raise him, and that was a big gift that I had. His father, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. He's a good dad. It was sometimes, we judge because, a lot of your audience may think, what kind of parent lives their 1-year-old child and goes. But he was really a good dad. He just couldn't, he wanted to succeed in life as well. He wanted to be okay. Like, he didn't want to be, pardon my French, fucked up by staying in a place that is not good for him. And he also wanted to provide for his son, but just in a different way. So he had to leave, and he made sure that he saw his son twice a year. um, One time, normally he'd come over, or even sometimes twice, and sometimes I would go with him, with my son there, and he would see him. So, and he was always close to him. They would speak on the phone. They'd have really good relationship, even though it was remote. It was good. And that is something I'm very grateful for, because now, guess what? Like, my son, 2 years ago, just before he turned 14, he was like, I want to go live with dad. I'm ready. Like, I've always wanted this. I love dad. He's the best dad. And he is, as I said, really good dad. And he made sure to nurture this relationship throughout his life. So, it worked. So he was like, I want to go live with dad. This is the right time. I'm growing up. I need him. He's cool. I can do stuff with him that I can't do with you. And he's right. And it was the right timing, because it was wartime in Israel, like just after October 7th. And both me and his dad don't want him to go to the army. We want to change the trajectory of our life and our lineage and the conditioning in Israel and all of that. So, we want to break that chain. So for us, he's not going to the army, and he's aligned with that, luckily. So that was the right time to do that. We wanted to do it anyway when he grows older, but he asked to do it at that moment. And I was like, okay, life doesn't ask you. Life is just happening. So you have to like surrender and, go and escort him and be the best mom you can, which is what I've done. I went to Australia and saw his new school, his new home, met up with his dad and his wife, his new wife, and his step brothers and sister. And everything's fine. The environment is great. Everything's ready for him. The only thing I had to do was to let go. And it was super hard, but I did. So now he lives there for the past 2 years. He lives in Australia, and I am a nomad. So I left Israel and I'm just traveling around the world and working and everything. And it's really different. Like, my life now is really different. But if I just go backwards for a second to the story of after the divorce. So I had to start my life over as a young corporate manager, um, and be a young mom and a good employee to do a good job and to climb the ladder and to save money, and I did. And at one point, when I was 40 already and he was about 10 years old, COVID started, and I started noticing everything. Like, I literally woke up to all the madness and the lies. And I have seen some of these things before, but never dove too deep into them. But COVID was like too shocking to look away. So I started looking at the politics, at the democracy, at then the mandates that came, like everything that was coming down the pike. It was so nasty, and I decided to be vocal about it and speak out, and to really take a stand, and also belong to a minority of people that would do the same. And I knew that would bear consequences on my career, on my social life, family, whatever, and it did. But I was ready for it, because that was more important for me, protecting my son from this madness and protecting myself and creating a new reality in which I do not follow and comply like everyone else just because someone said so, but because I have actually operated my common sense and judgment and decided for myself what's right for me and my son. And I had a lot of conflicts and issues with school, with teachers, with principals, with you name it, with social groups I was part of, with my workplace, like with everything. But I stood strong because I really believed in what I was doing. And I think I'm still very happy that I did. My son got to see his mom fighting for those things that were important, and for him as well. And and now, like 5 years later, I have a totally different life. So I'm like done creating wealth and prosperity for other people in their companies and businesses. I do it for myself today, and I have my own small business with a podcast and writing for some magazines from time to time. I never thought I would do something like that, but that's the best way for me to exercise my skill and gift, I think, that I have, which is my voice. So I speak out, and that's what I do. And and I'm happily divorced. I did have a second relationship, really good one, for 9 years. It took about 5 years until I found that relationship. I thought I'm going to die old and alone. But no. At 35, I met my boyfriend, which is now my ex-boyfriend. But we were together for 9 years. It was amazing. It was the best relationship I've ever had, and I learned so much from it, and I'm very grateful for it. It ended now, but it was a magical period of my life. And it may happen again. Although now I'm kind of in that stage where I also think I'm going to die alone. But no, I want to stay hopeful.
Yeah, it's funny how there's so many stages to it, and it's like a valley, and then you're high, and then it's low, and it's like it's when I really
That's
a
what
lot
it
of
is to be a human. Yeah.
yeah, and I really think like it was interesting because I didn't listen to the podcast with you to learn about divorce. I didn't know about your story, but I related to a lot because I think divorce is like this just lever that like
Yeah.
it's so scary to do, and it's for even if it happens to you or if you're the one that decides, it's like once you've done it and made that change, and a year later, it does get probably worse before it gets better, but you realize that you are still standing. I
Yeah.
feel like is it courage that it gives you, that like you can try stuff, or that you can just even change your mind about something or stand up for something that you might not have believed. It's almost like I feel like a lot of us, this kind of it sounds extreme, but brainwashing that tends and propaganda that just tends to float around whatever side you're on.
Yeah.
It's like we're popping that bubble when you get divorced, and you realize like, oh, nobody's gonna save me except myself. So I'm gonna follow what my curiosity, and if it doesn't work, I'm gonna go this way. And I think that's a unique thing to people that get divorced.
Rob, I think that, as you said, courage is a key word here because, yeah, it's the hardest thing to do in life, I think, because you have to admit that so many things that you pretended were okay are not. So it really humbles you, and it's a very, very difficult experience to have. I agree with you. But then it builds you so well for the next chapters because it shows you that you can start over and that life has this rhythm and cycles and chapters open and close, and you're not dead through those experiences and journeys. You're not dying, you're just like developing. um as hard as it may feel, some people really feel like they're going through death during those times, and I totally understand it. But it makes you so much more resilient and courageous because you understand that you can face you can face truth. You can, I mean, obviously not everyone is truthful or authentic when they go through this process, but it's a very good thing to do if you're going through a divorce process. Like, try to just, it's kind of your opportunity. Like, life is presenting you with this opportunity to bring up all the shit, that has been swept under the rug. Like, this is a time because now it's cleaning time. And when you clean, it's messy, it's dirty, it's smelly, it's disgusting, but then it's clean after. And
Hmm.
if you keep some stuff under the rug, the bump is still there. And you're going to have to face it at one point in your life, even if you're just kicking the can down the road, if you're not bringing it all up at this opportunity. So it's a really good opportunity to bring it all out and to face it with courage. And then the trick is, try to bring the same level of courage and authenticity you had in your divorce to other areas of your life. If you can do that, then you've leveled up in the game of life. That's another hack, like life hack. How can I bring that same level of fearless ruthlessness, even like fearless authenticity to other areas of my life, and not hide away from the truth there, and open things up with people, other relationships. Yeah, it's not your husband. Yeah, it's like less urgent or less important, you would think, but it's as important, because when you start bringing that level of authenticity to everywhere in your life just becomes so much better, because you get rid of what's not right, and you stay with the honest and true relationships, and you say stuff to people that you never wanted to say, and you actually confront the tough stuff. So it's a really, yeah, it's a really good opportunity that life brings you. It's up to us to decide how we want to use it next, but if we're smart enough, we'll continue using those skills.
The one thing I wanted to hear you talk about, that I heard you in the podcast talk about, like, I think there's a big in our called political climate, society. There's a lot of like a victim mindset.
Uh-huh.
It's very seductive because we can blame somebody, or we're dependent on something, or this leader, whichever side you're on, controls us, or we're going to talk a little bit about money because that's a huge pain point of divorce,
Right.
where a lot of us
Yes.
get a lot worse off before we get better. Talk about how like insidious and dangerous that mindset that a lot of us fall into because it's easy to, and
Oh
why
yeah.
it's so important to break free of.
Yeah, that victimhood mentality is the biggest risk here because once you start, if you're in a situation when you feel like there is 0% blame on you and 100% blame on someone else, that's a signal for you to know that perhaps there's some stuff you're not seeing, like a blind spot that you're not seeing, that carries some truth or responsibility of yours that you don't want to bring to the forefront, because it's not possible that it's 0 100 and 100% responsibility lies with the other person, because the cliche is true, it takes two to tango. There's always something that one side benefits from, the other side loses. But the if we think that we are, he's doing this to me, or she's doing this to me, it's like there is somewhere that we're holding on to some kind of benefit, and the benefit may be, I want to be right. It could be as simple as that. Like, he's doing this to me, I am the righteous person. Like, we love being right. That is a big benefit we get out of those conflicts, because then we're the good ones and they're the bad ones. But there's always, it cannot be that there's zero responsibility on our side. And oftentimes the responsibility can be, I allowed this to happen. Like, I allowed myself to stay in a relationship that is not good for me. I had not given enough honor and respect to who I am, to my life, to my body, to my soul, to stay in an abusive situation, for example. It's not the case with me, right? But in many cases, there is a responsibility that we have not taken. So when you always look at other people or other external situations and not yourself, you are in the victimhood mentality. You are the victim. It's everything but you. And when you start living life from, I take brutal honesty and acceptance of my life and my situation, and I assess everything that happens to me as me being in the source of everything. It's like, I am like, what's common to all these breakdowns in my life? I am in them. So, I may as well put myself first as the possible cause for why these things are failing, and start checking within myself what's not working, what has me be in those situations, create those type of recurring patterns again and again, choose similar partners, or be in those scenarios that are oftentimes similar. So that, yeah, you want to stop being a victim. And we are victims of other people. We are victims of our own psyche justification that we are always right and always pure. And on top of that, add on to that we're victims, because you touched on the money system, we're victims of other external factors and forces that have created a dynamism or a mentality of a victim and an abuser. And that happens all the time. But on the most part, we are oblivious to it. We just accept it as a default for life. And I'm talking about our careers, our work, our monetary system, like the money we have or don't have, and how we keep chasing that. That is all part of the design of the matrix and the system that we live in. Like, I'm saying the word matrix, I don't know how many people will resonate with them, but whatever. It is a matrix, and it has a design. It has a very genius design, I would say, to create various subsystems under the monetary system, that all of them will have a certain incentive structure in place to keep those on top with power and money, oftentimes, and those on bottom complying and victims of the system, or like having to sell their soul for the system that they're in, whether it's education or health or um, finance, or bring any system.
Hmm.
It has this structure, this incentive structure. And so we find ourselves from a very young age, all the subsystems are designed to create a predicted trajectory for us to walk in as we grow older. So it starts very early in the education system, that is supposed to indoctrinate us to be really good employees later on, or soldiers, depending where you live in the world. Like in Israel, you're brainwashed from a very young age to think that it's normal to go to the army and maybe die. Um, so it's normalized. So those systems are preparing you for the next systems that will come later. So then childhood, and then schools, and then uh, universities, which I don't know how much your audience knows, but a lot of corruption in the higher education system, and propaganda that exists in the different, it doesn't matter which country you're from. The systems work the same way. It's got a nuance here and there, but it's all the same. So then you have the education system, and then you have, you're old enough, you have to start working, right? Welcome to the grown-ups world. In that world, you're supposed to sell your soul to an employer or a profession or someone that will give you money so that you can try and beat the inflation of the country that you're in, try and beat the taxes that you're being introduced to every Monday and Thursday, try and beat the fact that the money you make in the one job you have is probably not enough for you to survive on and to sustain your family on. And so at a very young age today, it wasn't the case a few years ago, but a few generations ago, but today it is the case that at a very young age, young people understand that they have to prepare themselves to a life of debt, or that at least debt will be part of their life in some form. If they were not born to a super wealthy family, which is the majority of society, then they're going to have to work very hard and or be very creative with how they make enough money to sustain,
Hmm.
and also to be attractive enough to attract a partner, right?
Hmm.
So it's a super hard life, and a lot of young people understand that they're entering a very tough reality, and so they're trying to understand at a very young age, what is the stock market, what is a Bitcoin, like what are investments, how can I invest money, how can I save and invest, because they know that they're on this hamster wheel that is going to be very hard for them to get out of. Most people never get out of it, and they just keep working all of their lives, sometimes 2 jobs or 3 jobs, to make a living and to pay the bills and taxes and hedge inflation. And then we never stop to think, is that normal? Is that okay? Like, is it normal that it's like that? Is it supposed to be like that? Like, is it okay that the anchor on primetime TV talks about this thing called inflation and how the Fed is going to cut rates of interest or not? And like, is it okay? Is it all normal? And the answer is no, but no one tells you that it's not normal. It shouldn't be that way. There shouldn't be a central authority deciding what happens with money. And the fact that money is tied to the state and the government, and they have the monopoly on money and how it behaves, and they can decide arbitrary, like this guy called Jerome Powell, he can change the course of your life. Someone appointed him, right? But he can decide just overnight that something happens to the currency you're using, and that makes you richer or poorer overnight. and now you have more or less, and the inflation now goes up. So you're losing your money. Essentially, they're stealing from you without telling you that that's what they're doing. You understand that taxation is theft, but no one understands that inflation is theft. It is theft. So we are being stolen from always. And guess what? All countries around the world are using the same system. It's called the fiat monetary system. And no one stops to ask how it works. And is there another way? And the good answer is yes, there is another way. Because the moment you stop and you ask that question and you start learning about the history of money and how the system is designed and why it's designed the way it is, you understand it's the biggest scam ever. It's probably bigger than all the other scams you know. I mean, maybe geoengineering is a bigger scam, but that's a totally different conversation.
Right.
But you know, bigger than COVID, bigger than everything you'd experienced, bigger than all the false flag operations and the wars that you know. The fiat monetary system is the reason why we have wars. It's the reason why you have booms and busts and crises and emergencies. And, even COVID was a really good excuse for central banks to print incessantly and just be so irresponsible with the way that they print money, and they created a big crisis for a lot of small businesses and they had to close down. This is just a small example, but everyone knows about the big financial crisis and bail-ins of banks and bailouts. It's all part of the same mechanism. So the moment you wake up to that, you understand that there is another way and that you can start hedging your savings in a different way. And you can start also experiencing life much more easily than in the fiat matrix when you move to a Bitcoin standard, which is what I have done in the past 3 or 4 years. And life looks very different from that side, I can tell you. So yeah, it exists. I don't
Yeah.
know if I went too far, but
Well,
it
and
took
that
me
is
there.
no, absolutely. I love it, but it's an interesting thing because I'm sure anybody that's still listening, if they hear even the word Bitcoin, their
They
eyes
may
roll
switch off.
back, they switch off, or they've heard about, oh, it's a scam, or you've been on a dating app where, like, I think that's a really good bad PR place is where people are trying to sell you some kind of crypto and things like that.
Uh-huh.
Talk a little bit about, obviously it's a rabbit hole that's not enough for this conversation, but I think it is an option, a small hedge, just some curiosity that people can start to dig into, because like you said before, generations ago, you could afford a house if you
Yeah,
got divorced.
right.
You could pay for your kids' school, and now you can't.
You didn't
And I
need
think,
to. The other day I had a ride. A young guy, 22 years old, gave me a ride back from where we were to where I am right now. So we had an hour to talk. And he asked me a lot of questions. And one of the questions he asked me is, what do you think about the S&P 500? And I'm like, dude, you're fucking 22. Why do you care? Like, he's graduating soon in one of the US top universities in Cornell, right? And he's really worried about a job, and he's a smart guy, very very, like, he's going to graduate with good grades and everything. Shouldn't be a problem for him to do well in life. And yet he's asking me about the S&P 500. It's crazy. Like,
mhm,
what he's supposed to focus on is what do I want to do? Like, what do I love doing in life? What kind of pursue I want to have? What kind of passion do I have that I want to either study more or go and work and exercise myself in various, but instead he has to think about the student loan, and he has to think about how he beats this monster called fiat. He doesn't even know that that's what he's doing. He thinks it's normal to be interested in the S&P 500. So obviously I answered him, and we compared yields of the S&P 500 and gold and Bitcoin, just so he can see, what works the best. But yes, it wasn't like that for our parents' generation. They could afford a home. So I'd recommend two things to start. One is a good book of my friend Natalie, which I was on her podcast where you saw me. She wrote a book called Bitcoin is for Everyone. And that's a really good starting point for anyone to understand it in a very simple language. So you can find this on Amazon. And second is a starter kit that I put together that has podcasts, movies, books, some infographics, like a lot of different resources that normally when people ask me where do I start, I send them that starter kit because it's like it's ordered in a really good way, and that's how I learned when I
Mm.
started. So I can send you that link, and you can share it with the audience. But just shortly, you're asking like what's the difference between Bitcoin and crypto? Like, is that a good starting point?
Well, I
Or
think I think there's a natural resistance people have where they'll just tune you out right away and say, "Oh, that sounds like a scam," or "Oh, I missed it," and it's like
yeah,
that
okay,
ship
let's
has
do that. I
sailed.
missed
So
it.
so I think there's just like that overall thing of why we're so resistant to things like this.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, talk about that because I think you talk about the psychology of just like our minds and change, and
Yeah,
that's where
so
I think it
we
parallels with
don't like
work.
changes. Like we think that life is constant and stable, and what we have right now is what will be always, and that's the kind of, in an unconscious way, that's what we try to preserve. But that's an illusion because life is dynamic and it's changing all the time, and life is energy, and energy is movement, and movement is change. So there is no fixed or constant in life. It's constantly changing. And when we try to hold on to our beliefs or knowledge or skills as firm constructs, it's keeping us from evolving, from developing. And we don't like changing, we don't like learning new things. We're like, let me do what I know how to do and leave me alone. Or my husband takes care of the money, I know nothing about money. And it's like, we don't want to evolve, we don't want to learn new things, even if we pretend to be uh, um, curious creatures. We're not, we're very lazy. We prefer to just do what we know how to do. And I had to learn whatever it is, carpentry, because I'm a carpenter, so that's what I do, and leave me alone. So when you come with a subject like money, it's like, why do I need to learn about money? Like, there is no other subject that sounds more boring than money. Like, just let me use it and that's it. But the hard truth is that we all suffer because of money. We suffer because of it. And we don't stop to ask the question. I mean, if we were curious enough, if we wanted real improvement in our lives all the time, the only sane thing to do is to stop and ask, why am I suffering? I want to get to the bottom of this. I want to understand what has me work so hard, or beg for more, or be upset with someone if they don't give me, or think that I don't have enough to provide, or all that stuff. It's all related in the end of the day to economic decisions which we make every second, every minute of every day. It's just, so we're oblivious to that, and we just go on automatic pilot. So we resist change and we resist learning new things because we, first of all, have egos, and we are lazy. So the first thing that Bitcoin teaches you is to humble down and to let go of that stupid, fixation we have to trying to make everything work, even though we don't want to accumulate more knowledge. Like, it's not going to happen. It's that great saying of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's not going to happen. So if you want to see different results in your life, you got to change, you got to learn new things. And money is one of them, because guess what? It will help you tremendously in every area of your life if you learn about money. And believe me, it was not on my checklist when I decided that I'm starting a new chapter. I did not think I'm going to have a podcast and write about CBDCs and money and Bitcoin and all that stuff. I did not. Just today, I love it so much, so I do. But I did not think money could be such an interesting topic. But I really see it as the underlying layer of life. It's like the oxygen we breathe. It's always there. And it really dictates how our life would look like. So I highly encourage people to take a minute to inquire and question, what is the money system like and why is it operating the way it is? Get curious about it. Get humble enough to admit that either you don't know, or that you have been misled or manipulated to think that it's good for you, where really the truth is that it's not. It's a big scam against you. The money system is rigged against you. And the earlier you wake up to that truth, and many Bitcoiners say when they wake up to it, like once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Because once you see it everywhere. As I said, you see it in the top system, the monetary system, but then you see it in all the subsystems. It's all a byproduct of the fiat monetary system. It's all designed in a very similar way. So then you start looking at the world in a different lens, and then you start asking yourself, okay, so now what? Like, what's the solution? And then you discover whatever, gold or stocks or whatever, and then you discover Bitcoin. And at first you may be resistant to it because of the reasons we said, but also because you're a little bit brainwashed by the media or your friends that have told you that this is a scam or whatever. They also told you that that thing is safe and effective, and that it will be good for your health. And guess what? It's not. So humble yourself and start listening, or read a book, whatever your preferred way of learning is, and discover that this thing that people say is a scam is really an amazing alternative to what we have today. And just in short, the reason for why it is so amazing as an alternative is because it flips the whole paradigm on its head. The rules of the game in the world of Bitcoin are completely inversed from the rules of the current monetary system. So if today you have a system that is built on centralization of power with central entities like central banks, like governments, Bitcoin dismantles that. Bitcoin is a decentralized system that puts the power back in the hands of the holders. If you hold your own Bitcoin in self-custody, you don't need anyone. You don't need a bank. You don't need the government. You don't need a central bank. And guess what? You also don't need to ask for permission from anyone to use what's yours. You know how today you need a permission from the bank, right? If you come to pull out money, they're asking you why, what for, how much, blah, blah, blah. You have all these caps and limits and all that stuff. You want to wire transfer money to someone. Oh, hold on. There are some rules here in the bank. We don't do just whatever we want. You want to pull out everything you have? Ooh, hold on. Why? What? What for? What? So with Bitcoin, you don't need to tell anyone anything. It's yours and you do whatever you want with it. So permissionless is one of the best characteristics of this system, and the fact that it's decentralized in hands of hundreds of thousands of entities around the world that are running nodes, and they're all running the same ledger on hundreds of thousands of nodes. So if some nodes get taken down for some reason, you have the copy of the same ledger in hundreds of thousands of computers around the world. That's why Bitcoin today is the most secure and the most robust and the most reliable computer network in the world, more than all of the big nations combined. Like if you take the US Army and China and Russia and all the big countries around the world and you put together all their hashing power, their computing power versus the Bitcoin network, Bitcoin is way bigger. There are a lot more computing power that is geared towards the Bitcoin network than any other network, and it's never been hacked in the 15 or 16 years that it exists, unlike many of the systems that you know today, whether it's insurance companies, health, education, governments. They're being hacked every day. Like, that's why you have a whole industry called cybersecurity. So, welcome to this world where everyone will try to scare you off and give you all these excuses. Oh, but, they use it for crime. Oh, but yeah, they use dollar for crime.
Right.
A lot more than Bitcoin. It's bad for the environment. No, actually, it's not.
Yeah,
It's like,
it is like follow the incentives, and I think it can
yeah,
be even the things. It can start to get overwhelming where our brains get a little lazy and we shut off and we forget about it. But I think conversations like this, and that's why I found you to be so compelling, is like you're a relatable woman that's gone through these things. You've lived life. You have kids. They're not just these tech cyber nerds that are into this, and it's like, and the most important thing is like, to your point, is like if it's not working, you've got to figure something else out. And I think going through divorce and dealing with financial issues in today's world in 2025, 2026, it's only going to get harder. So
yeah,
to limit yourself and say, "Oh, I don't want to learn about this," it's like you're really just selling yourself short. And going full circle, I think when you get divorced, you've taken probably one of the biggest risks and done one of the things that nobody else in your family or friends might have done. So you've already like taken this leap before. So I think just
that's right.
keeping your mind open, staying curious, and learning. I think
It's
it's
very
a great
healthy to
lesson.
learn. And you know, what's the worst that can happen? Just don't do it. Don't buy Bitcoin. Like, okay,
Right.
you
Right.
spent some time learning something new. It's not for you, no problem. Move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you
Absolutely.
know, what brought me to this is really wanting to hedge my savings for my son.
Mm.
That was the reason why I went into it in the beginning. And I had a lot of questions, just like probably your audience does, which is very normal and okay. And I asked all these questions to a friend that was graceful enough to answer me. And once I got the answers, I was like, all right, that sounds good. I'm going to put a little bit of money on it at the beginning. Did my first purchase, my first transaction. And since then, I was like, okay, let me continue learning. And I continued learning more books, more podcasts, more stuff. And the more I learned, the more conviction I built, the more I understood how this system works. The more I'm like, I want to put more in there. I want to move my money from this risky system to this safe system. You know, it's a lot safer than what we have today. In fact, there were times during this transition period that I would wake up like in the middle of the night and I go, fuck, what if the bank collapses tonight and I wake up in the morning tomorrow and my money is gone? Like, no one can guarantee that that would not happen. Whereas when I have it in Bitcoin, I sleep well because I know I'm managing that. No one else is
Hmm.
managing it for me.
Oh
So
yeah, and that can happen when I think the other thing that gets people is that it can go up and it can go down, and a
yeah,
lot of that conviction that you talk about, you do need to study because a lot of
yeah,
people see the
exactly.
down and they say, "I'm out.
It's
This is
not
too
for
much,
me.
too
Yeah, but they
scary
have
for
to
me."
understand that this is a savings technology. And in a
Hmm.
savings technology, you don't look at a graph every day. Do you look at the graph of the US dollar and ask yourself, is it up or down today? No, it's like
Hmm.
it's there.
Right.
So a
Right.
savings technology is something you look at the long term. So in Bitcoin, it's normally 4 year cycle. You put it there and you want to forget about it. You don't want to
Hmm.
keep checking the price because in the long term, it keeps going up versus the dollar.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
and I love how you talk about it because it is more than just the money. It's more than a stock. It's just like it's your savings. It's what you've worked for. It's your sovereignty. And I think like
exactly.
when you get divorced, especially, like nobody's coming to save you. It's you can't go ask your husband what's going on with the retirement account. It's on you. So it pairs nicely, and I hope more people will get curious, and that's all you can really ask for.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Efrat, we could probably talk for days on deeper levels on all kinds of topics. Thank you so much for being on. Let people know what's the best place to find you.
Probably X is the best place to find me, but I'll give you one link that has all my channels because I have a blog and I have the podcast and they can follow me in all these places.
Yeah, absolutely. You're the Voice podcast. I think just listening to these conversations super helpful for people. So thank you for being on today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.